Like many other people, I am not happy with this latest episode of Game of Thrones. I thought the episode was beautifully directed, and I thought we got a lot of great scenes. And I don't think the key issue I have with the episode is the fact that what I wanted to happen didn't happen. I think my key issue with this episode and the last couple seasons of Game of Thrones is that it's not logical storytelling. It's not emotionally satisfying. And the story is not grounded in any common sense, but instead it's grounded in the element of surprise. And this element of surprise has gone against previously foreshadowed plot points. We've seen it defy prophecy. We've seen set up plot points go to the wayside. And we've seen the show undermine very important character arcs. Like just in this season, we know that Jon is a Targaryen, and we know that his parents were married, which means that he's a legitimate Targaryen. And when Jon rides Rhaegal for the first time, it's not an emotionally significant scene. It's turned into a joke. And then after that, he turns into a dragon rider that he uses to help fight the Night King. We see how some character arcs were destroyed. When Bran was meant to be ready to fight the Night King, but really Bran did nothing of significance other than being bait. Bran was meant to help defeat the Night King, but instead all Bran has ever done is go back to find out about Jon's Targaryen past. Melisandre left for a purpose, and she came back to be a glorified matchstick. All she did was light things on fire and then die. And the key problem I have is this war was set up for season after season. We were even introduced to the White Walkers in the first episode of the entire show. And it was destroyed immediately by Arya, who I would argue this wasn't her fight. And they tried to apply a prophecy to the situation that was really poorly done.
Brown eyes, green eyes, and blue eyes. Brown eyes, blue eyes, green eyes. Eyes you'll shut forever.
They switched how the prophecy was told to try and make it seem compelling, when really that prophecy was probably just to convey to us that Arya was becoming a faceless person in the future. And the problem was, just to set up that scene of Arya killing the Night King left us very emotionally dissatisfied because she has never had any emotional ties to the Night King in the first place. She's never experienced loss from the Night King. And while Arya has her fun moment and kills the Night King, it puts many other characters to the wayside. Daenerys hardly did anything against the Night King, and she has the dragon and she brought the armies. And Jon did even less. Jon had all the emotional stakes in this war for the Long Night. He was built up to lead people into the Long Night, and the best that he did was yell at a dragon. So looking at this show, I've seen one key problem. I contend that Season 6 was a perfect season. It had everything I wanted, but it's Season 7 and Season 8 where this started to fall apart. And that's when the producers of the show were trying to wrap up the White Walker threat, and how to deal with that threat. But I think the last two seasons of the show were designed a specific way. They were designed to push the agenda of what the producers wanted to create an entertaining show, while moving in the direction of the very specific ending that George R.R. Martin told them about. And in order to do this, they string together plots that kind of defy logic and undermine the character arcs of our favorite characters. And that key issue can be found in Season 7 and Season 8. I think these seasons were written together, and you can tell, because these seasons were written in circles, and all the key plot points don't really have any purpose. So let's start with Season 7. Season 7 started to fall apart for me in Episode 5, when Tyrion has the very bright idea on capturing a White to make peace with his sister Cersei. The first issue is that immediately undermines Tyrion's character. Tyrion understands his sister and he knows that she is not trustworthy. Second of all, Jon should know better, because he's fought the White Walkers at Hardhome, and he knows that going to capture a White is suicide. And at the same time, Bran is useless. Bran saw the Night King approaching Eastwatch, and he sent one raven. So then they decide to go capture a White. And this made me so frustrated because they made a situation that gave our characters plot armor. They were in a dangerous situation and the water broke around them so the Whites couldn't attack them. And they were protected for just long enough until Daenerys arrived on the back of Drogon to rescue them. But of course, the show wouldn't be as significant if Jon Snow didn't have his heroic moment. So they just make Jon fall behind, fall through the ice, and be left alone to be rescued by Benjen. This is a plot point that has no significance and it has no purpose other than to kill off Benjen and get that plot point done with, and to give Jon Snow his heroic moment, which he should have gotten during the Long Night. And then they go all the way to King's Landing to get turned down by Cersei, and then some weird negotiations happen between Tyrion and Cersei, and then she agrees. So I think in season 7, we realize that the characters captured a white for nothing. Cersei was still an enemy. That was not emotionally satisfying because nothing really happened. Other than we got to see Jon have his badass moment over the wall, Daenerys loses her dragon for nothing. And we got to see all of our characters come together in King's Landing. Benjen died sacrificing himself for Jon for no reason. These plot points are done for spectacle, and all the poor decisions the characters have made have defied their own character logic just to support this poor plot. And that goes into season 8. They make a joke about Jon riding Rhaegal.
What if he doesn't want me to?
It's a big character moment, but they turn it into a joke to capitalize on Jon and Daenerys' romance. But then in episode 3, during the long night, Jon is all of a sudden this professional dragon rider, and that's not explored at all. And with episode 3, there were a ton of issues that I went through before. They strung together an Arya prophecy that really wasn't applied for that. They switched the slots of the prophecy to make it fit. They set up the importance of ice and fire, Daenerys and Jon, only to just throw it by the wayside. And they set up a prophesied savior, Azor Ahai, or the prince that was promised, only to mean nothing. The person who was resurrected by Melisandre and thought he had a true key purpose, all he did was scream at a dragon. And the new three-eyed raven was nothing but bait. And the key issue was that the Night King, even having thousands and thousands of years of history behind him, died in his first battle over the wall. And he was brushed over like nothing. And the issue is that there's always human-to-human conflict. The Night King was a much bigger deal than that, and the show didn't treat him properly. So it wouldn't be a proper video unless I went through on how to fix it. Obviously, for the last 2 seasons, I would completely rewrite everything. But I'm going to hold myself to the producers of the show and their timeline and how they structured the show. I just want to prove that the producers of the show can have emotionally satisfying writing without sacrificing their characters and every other element of the show for the sake of surprise, and for the sake of television spectacle. I can change a couple things from the last 2 seasons and make it seem like an actual emotionally satisfying show. And it will follow the same rules. All of our characters need to go north to have a White Walker interaction, to capture a white. Because Dave and Dan surely want our characters to go in King's Landing and have a big reunion. And then in season 8, the Night King needs to be defeated because the producers of the show want this to be a Game of Thrones and not a Song of Ice and Fire. So based on those facts, this is how I would change the show. Instead of it being Tyrion's idea to capture a white, and to defy his complete character arc to trust his sister, and instead of Jon agreeing to go on a suicide mission, this idea should come from Bran. And this does a couple things. It saves the integrity of our favorite characters while developing others. We know that Bran has a connection with the Night King. The Night King touched him and was in the Weirwood Tree with him. And we know that Bran is still learning as the Three-Eyed Raven. So it'd be interesting to explore a plot point where the Night King was in Bran's head. And it was Bran's idea and sent a raven to Jon saying that they must go north of the wall to capture a white, to make peace with Cersei and get their armies together to fight the Night King during the long night. Jon would trust his brother, and the characters would have a debate and ultimately decide to fulfill this mission, because of Bran's abilities. And in episode 6, when they go over the wall, instead of everything going wrong and them being trapped on a rock, and all the whites breaking through the ice. First of all, I'm Canadian and ice does not break like that. That was a very cheaply written plot escape, and it completely ruined the momentum of the episode. What I would do instead is have the Night King stop all of the whites from attacking. Instead of using a plot crux, like the broken ice to keep the whites away, just have them stop and stare at our favorite characters. It brings a sense of mystery, a sense of suspense. It makes us ask, why are they not attacking? And then as soon as Daenerys arrives on the back of Drogon, then the Night King attacks. And the same situation happens. The Night King kills Viserion, and our characters escape. And what we'd find out later is that the Night King manipulated Bran through the Weirwood Tree to follow his commands. All the Night King wanted was a dragon, and he got it. That raises the stakes for the season. It shows that the Night King is an intelligent character, and it shows that Bran still has a lot to learn as the Three-Eyed Raven. And then after that, Jon is left to die. But instead of them wasting Benjen coming to rescue Jon, this is the moment we should find out Jon is a dragon rider. Instead of making a big joke of it, have Jon close his eyes and call Rhaegal just as Daenerys did in season 5. This will further foreshadow Jon's Targaryen blood. It will raise a lot of questions, and it would build that tension between Jon and Daenerys further. And that would feed into season 8. This scene here where Jon and Daenerys hop on their dragon could mean a lot more. In this scene, they could talk about how Jon called Rhaegal, how they only really listened to Daenerys. And then Daenerys would give him permission again to ride Rhaegal, showing that she has a trust for him. But the point is that we have already been emotionally satisfied with Jon riding the dragon. It was an intense moment last season, and this scene would just solidify Jon's role as a dragon rider, and not just catch us by surprise during the War for the Dawn. And here we could have a side plot point on Bran learning how to block the Night King, how to get into the Night King's head, and how to manipulate aspects of the past, like what he did during the Tower of Joy, and with Hodor. Because Benjen told Bran that when the Night King comes, Bran will be ready. And I think at this point, it would be more emotionally satisfying to use Benjen as a character. Have him go through Eastwatch, have him arrive at Winterfell. And this sets up Benjen to defend his home with Jon, who he would finally reunite with, and with Bran and the rest of his family. And that goes into the Night King's fate. Arya shouldn't have killed the Night King because it wasn't emotionally satisfying. She had no hand in the War for the Dead at all. And the reason why it wasn't emotionally satisfying was because her plot was never geared towards the White Walkers, it was always geared towards Cersei. Cersei has been on her list for seasons. It doesn't make sense to give Arya her moment to defeat the White Walkers. It makes sense to give Arya her moment when fighting Cersei. And because they had Arya kill the Night King, it undermines the whole show because it goes against prophecy. It goes against character development. So I believe in this episode, Arya should have just fought well and taken out a lot of Whites and White Walkers. And then that goes to Melisandre. She had a lot to say about the Long Night, how it was actually the endgame. But when she arrived, she didn't really have a purpose other than as a matchstick. She was a glorified torch. She set things on fire. If the producers of the show want her to be that, then take it one step further. Have her sacrifice herself to light Jon Snow's sword Longclaw. That gives us an emotionally satisfying moment and makes us think that Melisandre didn't just die for nothing. And it gives the character a proper emotional send-off. All while feeding into prophecies that Jon is the one, and it builds on the character development that Melisandre and Jon have had together since she's the one who resurrected him in the first place. And I'm just shoehorning this together because anything could be more emotionally satisfying than Arya killing the Night King. You could have a battle scene with Jon with his flaming sword that Melisandre lit for him fighting with his uncle Benjen in the Godswood. Maybe you can shoehorn a plot together that says that the White Walkers won't attack Benjen because he's already been dead and resurrected. So maybe Benjen protects Jon while Jon pursues the Night King. Maybe Bran has learned how to get in the Night King's head. Maybe he can go back to the moment the Night King was created by the Children of the Forest, and he connects the Night King from the past with his current situation, really crippling him. And that might explain why the Night King has a fascination with Jon Snow. Maybe because of Bran's tempering, he gave the Night King a vision of him fighting Jon Snow, giving actual stakes to Jon Snow fighting him because the Night King saw him as a big opponent. And I think here Jon could kill the Night King. It would be emotionally satisfying and it would fulfill what the producers of the show wanted. And it's clear that the producers of the show wanted to face the White Walkers in the first 3 episodes and then wanted to focus on the main villain Cersei in the last 3 episodes. And what I just set up is how it should have been laid out. The first 3 episodes should have focused on ice. It should have focused on the White Walker threat and Jon Snow, since it's Jon Snow's fight. In the last 3 episodes, it should be focused on fire. It should be focused on Daenerys seeking her throne against Cersei. And this is where Arya would be useful because she has Cersei on her kill list. So I just wanted to get my thoughts out there on how these seasons are being written. And I wanted to show that you can just shoehorn in a plot and follow the same structure and still make it more emotionally satisfying than it has been. I will say I'm optimistic for the last 3 episodes because that's what the producers of the show do best. Please let me know what you think in the comment section down below, but until next time, I'll see you guys later.